Hi everyone, it's Roz here. I hope that we're all keeping well at home and that it won't be much longer before I see you all on the mat again. So for today's session, I thought that we could explore Bakasana or crane pose. So Bakasana is an arm balance in yoga asana. We'll start to look at some preparatory exercises. So I'll guide you guys through a very short sequence to get yourselves warmed up for a strong, stable Bakasana. There's three things that I want you guys to focus on in developing a good Bakasana, and that is a strong and stable shoulder girdle. You want a strong core and also flexibility or openness of your hips. So before we go into the specifics of the pose, I thought that we could take a moment here just to chat about Mula Bandha. So Mula Bandha translates to root lock in Sanskrit. And what it actually is an energetic lock that's situated deep in the core of the pelvis. And what it is a lifting or an awareness around the pelvic area. So we engage from deep within the core of the pelvis, and what it does is it helps to activate the base of the core. It's so important in landing a lightness and a lift in your Bakasana, and not just your arm balances, but really any pose within your yoga practice. So I'll guide you through a really quick exercise just to locate Mula Bandha, and we'll play around with it. Play around with it in your yoga practice at home. If you forget, completely fine. It's all part of the practice. All right? So we're going to start in a seated position on your mat. So I am in an easy cross-legged position, also known as Sukhasana. So if you're in that, just making sure that your sit bones are grounded and you've got equal weight on your left and your right sit bone. And then from there, I want you to drop your awareness deep into the seat of your pelvis or your pelvic seat. And just find that groundedness there. Let it sink into the earth for a second. All right. And then from there, leaving your sit bones nice and grounded on the mat, locating your lumbar spine, your lower back, and then see if you can lift that lower spine out of the pelvis. All right? And immediately, for some of you, you might be able to feel that lifting of the pelvic floor, and that's great. That's the start of Mula Bandha. But if you're not quite there yet, completely fine. Do not worry about it. We'll go through the next series of steps. All right? From here, just hands on your knees and closing the eyes, coming to the breath. All right. So you can start to call on your Ujjayi breathing. Ujjayi breathing just translating to your victorious breathing in Sanskrit. And what it is we inhale and exhale just gently through the nose. We gently constrict the back of the throat. And this should produce that oceanic sound. You should be able to feel this breath at the back of the throat. And it's not a forced breathing, it's not a forced breath, but rather very subtle, very powerful. So 5 breaths here, Ujjayi breathing. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then just keeping your eyes closed if it feels comfortable enough to do so. I want you to drop your awareness into that pelvic seat. Let it drop deep within the core of your pelvis. And see if you can locate your sit bones. Find that space between your 2 sit bones, between the left and the right sit bone. And then holding your attention there, I want you to find the space between your tailbone and your pubic bone. And really, those 4 points, your sit bones, your pubic bone, and your tailbone should form this diamond shape. So just finding that diamond shape in your mind's eye, and then just seeing if you can start to draw the network of connective tissues in towards the center of that diamond, and then lifting it up. And that's Mula Bandha for you. So let's see if we can start to engage Mula Bandha, that drawing of that network of tissues in towards the center and up towards your lower ribs. And let's see if we can maintain that lift throughout the length of this sequence. All right? Okay. And then from there, let's come into a tabletop position. So this will be the shoulder girdle part of your Bakasana. We are going to start to stabilize your shoulder girdle. So first, just getting those hips directly above the knees, just getting those shoulders directly above the wrists. And then from there, have your fingers spread on the mat. I want you to start to push those palms into the ground, start to push through those shoulders as you lift your upper back towards the ceiling. So it's as though you're trying to widen your scapulars right across your back. The back of your neck is long, and we're going to stay here for 5 breaths, guys. So 1, 2, continue to push through those shoulders, widening through that upper back. 3, see if you can lift that space between the shoulder blades up towards the ceiling. 4, and 5. Keeping your shoulders exactly where they are. You are going to start to curl your right toes under. So extend that right leg back, curl those right toes under. And then same onto the left side, transitioning into your plank pose. Now, pitch those shoulders forwards, get them directly above the wrists. Keep your shoulders exactly where they are. You're going to start to lengthen your heels towards the back, okay? And that will help to engage your quadriceps. And we are still keeping those alignment points, same as if your knees are on the mat. So you're still pushing your palms into the ground, still widening through those scapulars, still lifting that upper back towards the ceiling. And we're breathing here in your plank for 1. Start to feel that body warm up. 2. Draw that navel towards the spine. 3, 4, and 5. And then lifting sit bones up into your downward dog. So just taking a moment here, stay with the breath, guys, and start to set your downward dog up, all right? So we're still limbering up. You can start to walk your dog, all right? Releasing one heel to the mat and then the other. No rules to how you should move as long as it doesn't cause any pain in your joints, all right? You can bend both knees really deeply if you wish. Come up onto your tippy toes, pitch those shoulders forwards, back again. You can sway those hips gently from side to side if you wish. Just get movement into your downward dog. And then with your inhales and with your exhales, we're going to slowly settle into the pose. And find stillness. Lift your pelvic floor, engage Mula Bandha. Good. Now setting your downward dog up, your hands are your shoulder width apart, feet are your hip width apart, lengthening your heels towards the ground, and your gaze is towards that center point between your feet. You want to press your thigh bones back just to engage those quadriceps. And we're here for 5 more breaths. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And transitioning into a child's pose. So this is your resting pose. We're going to bring those knees out wide and then let those sit bones start to sink towards your heels as we walk those hands forwards. Arms are long down the mat. And if possible, forehead on the mat. If not, just stacking your fists one on top of each other and then placing your forehead on your fists instead. And just taking a few deep breaths here. See if you can start to lengthen, deepen, extend your inhales and your exhales as you take a quick moment. And let that air fill up your lungs, rib cage expanding, sideways lengthening.
And now I want you to bring your awareness to your hip joints, all right? And just being mindful that this is the hip flexion that you will need in Bakasana. All right, so see if you can start to draw the heads of your femur bones in your legs deep into those sockets, all right, those inner hip sockets. Okay, and then from there, we're going to step into our downward dog once again. We're going to start to wake that core up now. So you're going to start to bring your gaze forward. See if you can bring your gaze towards that center point between your hands. Bending that right knee as you inhale. And you're going to pitch those shoulders forwards. Knee goes to the right elbow. From here, as you take your next inhale, we're going to lift that knee up deep into the chest. Breathing here for 1, 2, keep pushing through those shoulders, palms as though you're trying to push the ground away from you. 3, 4, and 5. Back to your downward dog. And then on to the left side. Once again, bringing your gaze forwards. We're going to pitch those shoulders forwards, bend that left knee onto the left elbow. And then from there, as you take your next inhale, draw it deep into the chest. 1, 2, 3. Keep pushing the ground away from you. 4, and 5. Placing that foot back onto the mat, back into your downward dog. All right, now let's move on, shall we? Let's take an inhale here, gazing forwards. We're going to bend both knees really deeply. Find some buoyancy in those hips. And then from there, you are going to step or float your feet lightly forwards. And see if you can land in Malasana. So we're going to move into our garland pose. So depending on the flexibility of your hips, it will influence the positioning of your feet. Ideally, we work towards parallel feet in Malasana. But again, it depends on how open your hips are, all right? So if you're feeling a lot of pressure in your knees, pain in the knees, you don't want that. If you're feeling pressure in your hips, what you want to do is to have your toes pointing outwards instead. If this is still not quite happening today, completely fine. You're going to stabilize yourselves by coming up onto your fingertips and then coming up onto the balls of your feet. All right? Okay. And then as we practice all is coming, you will soon be able to work towards parallel feet on the mat in Bakasana. You want to let your sit bones sink down towards the ground. If possible, upper arms are on the insides of the knees, bringing hands to prayer position, Anjali Mudra at the heart center. And we're here for 5 breaths. You want to lift from the sternum. So there's this tendency for shoulders to start squeezing up to the ears. We don't want that. You want to draw those shoulders down. All right. For once again, the heads of the femur bones in the legs to draw deep into the hip sockets. And staying here for 5 breaths, we're counting 1, 2. Imagine 3 fingers below the navel. You want to draw that area towards the spine. 3, 4. Continue lifting up that pelvic floor. And 5. All right. So we're deep in the squat. And we're going to start to transition into Bakasana. So Malasana is a great starting point to move into your crane pose. So from there, we're going to start to place our palms onto the mat. All right, making sure that your fingers are spread on the mat, as much surface area that you can find. That's what you want, yeah? Your arms will start to become your legs as you stand on your hands in Bakasana. So fingers are spread on the mat. And then from there, I want you to start feeling those knees squeezing in, yeah, squeezing against your upper arms in towards the center line of your body, all right? And start to draw your pelvic floor up towards your lower ribs. So from there, squeezing knees deep in towards the center line of the body. And then from here, you want to play around with that shifting of the weight, yeah? So you can start to rock your weight back and forth, maybe into the balls of your feet, back into your heels,
You can sway gently from side to side if you wish. Just feel quite comfortable in this pose. And as you do this, you're going to start to feel the range of movement in your hips as well. All right. And then from there, we're going to start to come up onto tippy toes. So up onto the balls of our feet. We're going to start to pitch those shoulders forwards. And then from there, you're going to start to play around, maybe lifting one foot off the mat. Maybe the other, or if you wish, now keeping your gaze, your drishti forwards rather than straight down. If it goes straight down, you're going to fall on your nose. So that drishti goes forwards, that gaze goes forwards. And then from there, see if you can start to keep pitching those shoulders forwards and slowly, slowly feet off the mat. Now, that's not quite your crane pose that we are looking to work with today. That is a variation of crane, which is called Bakasana or crow pose. So what it does is it still uses the alignment principles of your crane, but it keeps you quite safe because you're quite close to the ground. Yeah? So play around with Bakasana, and if it's comfortable enough to do so, we're going to find some lift, yeah, and start finding that that height in your crane. So in your crane pose, we're going to bring our sit bones a little further up. So we're going to come into sort of a half chair pose, Ardha Utkatasana. Try to get those thighs parallel to the ground. Palms again, spread those fingers on the mat. We are going to try to bring those knees as high up those arms as you possibly can. For me, I'm going to start to nestle those knees deep into my armpits. That gaze is still forwards. And once again, same alignment points, guys. We're going to start to rock that weight. Play around with the shifting of the weight. Back and forth, back and forth. And then if you're feeling quite comfortable, we might lift up one foot, maybe the other foot, or maybe start to lean forwards and both feet off the mat. And all the way down. All right, so that's Bakasana. Give it a go. Remember your pelvic floor, lift it up. Remember the stabilizing of your shoulder girdle, and of course accessing that strength of the core deep into the midline of the body. So once you get into Bakasana, what else can you do? There are a few more tips and tricks that you can do with Bakasana. For example, once you're in Bakasana, you might want to jump back, take a vinyasa flow. So that's a nice way to transition to another pose if this is part of your yoga sequence for the day. All right, so in Bakasana, maybe lifting both feet up. And once you're there, jumping back, taking a vinyasa flow. Or if you're feeling particularly, playful, you might want to try jumping into Bakasana from your downward dog. So this is just something that I have been playing with this week. We're going to start bending those knees really deeply. Bring your gaze forwards, get some buoyancy in those hips. Yeah? And then from there, just lifting and see if you can catch yourself. All right. And there we go. That's Bakasana for you.